Welcome to the Edgeworth Echoes podcast. Discovering Edgeworthstown, a hidden gem of Irish history.
Welcome to this episode of Edgeworth Echoes. This is your host, John. In this episode, we will look at the early history of photography, at the life and career of Michael Pakenham Edgeworth, and the links between the Edgeworths and early photography. When you enter the library section of the Maria Edgeworth Centre and walk over to the right-hand side of the room, you will see, high up on a wall, a photograph of an older lady. The lady in the photograph is Maria Edgeworth, and there is a small card beside this photo that says she was the first ever Irish person to have their photo taken. This event took place at the studios of Richard Beard in Regent Street, London.
11 Gloucester Place, 23rd May 1841. Lestock came with me to breakfast here at 8 o'clock, and then he took Honora, Captain Beaufort and me to the Polytechnic, and we all had our likenesses taken. I will tell you no more, lest I should some way or other cause you disappointment. For my own part, my object is secure, for I have done, my dear, what you wished. It is a wonderful, mysterious operation. You are taken from one room into another, upstairs and down, and you see various people whispering and hear them in neighbouring passages and rooms. The whole apparatus and stool on high platform, under a glass dome, casts a snapdragon blue light, making all look like spectres, and the men in black gliding about like... I have not time to tell you more of that.
The image is a daguerreotype. This particular image used a new method which shortened the exposure time to under a minute. A daguerreotype was one of the earliest forms of photography, invented in the 19th century by Louis-Jacques Mandet Daguerre in 1839. It involved creating a unique image on a silver-coated copper plate using light and chemicals. This process allowed people to capture and preserve images in a way that had never been possible before, paving the way for modern photography as we know it today. Images produced were unique, one of a kind, and were noted for their clarity and sharpness. One side effect of new techniques of photography was the appearance of literary celebrities. Before photography, writers were usually depicted by artists and often with artistic license. Images of Maria Edgeworth on her books at this time did not look like her, but were an artist's impressions of her. While daguerreotypes were not suitable for mass-market books, other photographic techniques came along which allowed the author's image to be placed on every copy of their work. And authors also used these images to convey a certain impression of them as an author and as a person. Michael Pakenham Edgeworth was born in Edgeworthstown in 1812. His father was Richard Lovell Edgeworth and his mother was Frances Beaufort, Richard's fourth wife. Michael's half-sister Maria Edgeworth recalled that in his teenage years he was a keen gardener, with his own botanical collection. Michael was often referred to as Pakenham by his family. He was educated at Charterhouse from 1823 to 1827 and at Edinburgh University, where he studied Oriental languages and botany. In 1823, Maria Edgeworth visited Scotland to meet Sir Walter Scott, and also met with David Brewster. David Brewster was a scientist who invented the kaleidoscope in 1816 and was noted for his work with optics. Brewster was also a keen student of photography and was later knighted for his contributions to science. Brewster was also a close friend of William Henry Fox Talbot, the inventor of negative-positive paper photography, and corresponded regularly with him between 1839 and 1843, the period of Talbot's most intensive photographic research. Brewster met Maria Edgeworth, Michael Pakenham Edgeworth's half-sister, when she visited Scotland in 1823, thus marking the beginning of a most cordial friendship. According to Brewster's daughter, he and Miss Edgeworth carried on a close and lively correspondence. Brewster, in fact, visited Edgeworthstown in 1827, and a letter to his wife wrote that a more extraordinary family for talents, mutual affection, and everything that can interest I could not have conceived. While some have said that it was Maria who got Michael interested in photography, letters in the Bodleian Library, Oxford, reveal it was another sister, Frances, who regularly corresponded with Michael while he was in India. Indeed, it was Frances who persuaded Maria to pose for the photograph mentioned at the start of this episode, and was to have been there herself but was ill, so it was her husband Lestock Wilson who brought Maria to the studio. Michael Pakenham Edgeworth had joined the Indian Civil Service in 1831, serving in the East India Company, and was appointed to a post in northern India. When not occupied with his civil service work, he went around the locality collecting local plants, some of which were new to science at the time.
During a residence of several years in the northwest provinces of Bengal, I gradually collected about 2,000 species, and with very few exceptions, these were collected by my very own hand. Most of these I have given to George Bentham, President of the Linnaean Society.
Michael Pakenham wrote extensive articles for the Linnaean Society and experimented with botanical photography using a technique called photogenic drawing. Photogenic drawing, invented by William Henry Fox Talbot in 1834, utilised silver nitrate and sodium chloride on paper to create light-sensitive images. Pakenham Edgeworth began using this technique about 1839 as one of the first photographers on the Indian subcontinent. His sister Frances, herself interested in photography, would write letters to Michael informing him of the latest developments in photogenic drawing as an aid to his botanical studies. Pakenham first mentions experimenting with photography in his journal on 1st December 1839. Two journal entries for 1840 highlight his connection with Frances and his acquisition of new equipment.
January the 28th, 1840. I set out to prepare paper according to new rules sent out by my sister Frances in her last letter. The sun came out, and I tried my new paper, which succeeded so well in a way, so well as to encourage me to proceed. May 20th, 1840. I have obtained Ackermann's photogenic drawing apparatus, which I saw advertised and got up from Calcutta.
In 1842, Michael went on leave from his post in India, returning to Scotland and Ireland. During his time on leave, he visited his family in Ireland and took a number of photographs around the family home and church, as well as one of Maria. These photographs were collected by Sir David Brewster, along with many other photographs taken by photographers of the period. On 17th February 1846, at Old Machar, Aberdeen, he married Christina Macpherson. He and his wife travelled back to India, and the steamship in which they travelled stopped briefly to refuel at Aden, a port in the south of Yemen. Edgeworth went ashore to collect plants. In 2 hours he discovered 11 species new to science. He was elected Chief of Police for the Punjab in 1850. His diaries, which run to more than 8,000 pages, contain sketches and observations on all aspects of colonial and native life in India, as well as on botany and other interests, and form a rich source for historians. His time in India ended in 1859 due to severe overexposure to the sun, which made him very ill. Botanical specimens from his Indian and Ceylon collections are held at the Botanic Gardens of Glasnevin, Dublin, Trinity College, Oxford, and Kew Gardens. A number of plants are named in his honour, including Rhododendron edgeworthii and Edgeworthia chrysantha. He died suddenly on a trip to the Hebrides on 30th July 1881, and was survived by his wife and one of his 2 daughters. His other daughter had died as an infant in India in 1848. His surviving daughter married the Reverend Arthur Gray Butler in 1877, and together they wrote the Black Book of Edgeworthstown, published in 1927. And so we come to the end of this episode. As always, thank you for listening, and please like and share and follow us for more of the fascinating history of Edgerton. Until next time. If you are interested in learning more about the Society and the history they preserve, please visit www.mariaedwardscentre.com. You can sign up to our newsletter, book tours, learn about our annual literary festival, and read up on some of the remarkable people who have links to our town.
This has been the Edgeworth Echoes podcast, rediscovering history.